In this video I want to talk about a story unlike any other. In 2022, a Danish documentary released called The Mole. The Mole is a documentary made by Danish filmmaker and journalist Mads Brügger. The documentary is about a regular Danish guy who over a span of many years manages to become a high-ranking individual in the eyes of North Korean officials and report on the various activities within. The film has totally mind-blowing reveals that I think are not talked about enough, and the fact that this documentary isn't world famous is beyond me. Mads Brügger has previously covered North Korea in his 2009 documentary Red Chapel, where he brought two Danish-Korean comedians to North Korea to perform a vaudeville act. It focuses on the various aspects of North Korean life, including their treatment of disabled people, which is especially interesting since one of the comedians with him actually has a disability. Ever since releasing this documentary, he was banned from North Korea. He also made the 2011 documentary called The Ambassador, where he goes undercover as a Liberian ambassador to uncover the blood diamond trade in Africa. This alone shows that he is not afraid to go lengths to uncover hidden truths, although in The Mole he takes a much safer role compared to the other individuals in the movie. Now I want to go briefly over a bit of the characters in the documentary just so you get a better grasp about who it's really about. The most important character and the main character is Ulrik, better known as The Mole. Ulrik is a retired chef who currently lives on welfare in Denmark. He said his motivations for taking part in this documentary and for doing this came from befriending East Germans as a kid, so he probably learned about how a state can have complete control over its people. So he basically became a part of the Danish-North Korean Friendship Association and started recording their meetings under the guise of making YouTube propaganda. Also, he's a fan of the best football club in Denmark. Then we have Mr. James. Mr. James is a Danish man who is a former member of the French Foreign Legion and also a former drug dealer. He now works as a businessman in Denmark. His real name is Jim, but he plays the role of Mr. James, who poses as an oil billionaire. Mr. James is an extremely charismatic guy, as you'll surely find out. Then we have Kang. Kang is a representative for the North Korean government that follows Ulrik and the Danish-North Korean Friendship Association around when they're in North Korea. This is a pretty common thing for people visiting the country, especially people who record documentaries. You'll typically see that they have some sort of person following them around, making sure that they're not filming things they shouldn't film, and it's basically their responsibility to make sure that everything they record, everything they experience, makes North Korea look good. Lastly, we have Alejandro, who is the founder and head of the Korean Friendship Association, which is the international group for relations with North Korea. He's a very powerful man, as you'll come to find out. So these are basically just the characters. And I have to remind you now, this is a documentary. I know it sounds crazy, but it is a documentary. This is about real life. So I want to cover a little bit of the plot, but it's hard to cover the entire story without spoiling the documentary. So I won't do that. I'll share a little tidbits and try to get you intrigued. If you're already intrigued by now, you should definitely go watch the documentary now. So basically, the documentary starts with Ulrik Larsen, who joins the Danish-North Korean Friendship Association, and through that he eventually gains access to North Korea. He essentially infiltrates the organization to a degree where Alejandro, who is the big international delegate for North Korea, Alejandro makes him the official delegate of the Korean Friendship Association in Denmark, which means he gets a very high up position in this group of people. He gets a professional cameraman to join the association under the guise of being a new member, so they can film quote-unquote propaganda videos, and he ends up traveling around the world in the name of North Korea, where he ends up meeting all of the higher-ups in the organization and individuals that are connected to North Korea outside of North Korea, so basically everyone outside of North Korea who has some sort of connection with them. The Mole becomes a spokesman for North Korea and ends up spewing propaganda in the media all throughout Europe, and Alejandro essentially wants the Mole in the end to find people who are willing to invest in North Korea. Now remember, all of this is, or most of this is filmed with a hidden camera, which has some very tense scenes, and the Mole plans out most of his moves with the filmmaker Mads Brügger. So eventually Mads Brügger and the Mole invents Mr. James as an investor because they need to bring some sort of investor in. So they invent Mr. James as a character who's a businessman, an oil billionaire from Scandinavia. And this is where the documentary goes on a wild ride. I don't want to give away too much more, but here's a clip to get you intrigued if you aren't already.
I don't know if Jenny has already talked to you about the business we are doing.
Your weapon now?
A business, okay.
Yeah. He said to me, we have a collaboration with Syria, but our problem is to give them the armory. Do you think you can help us? Is that correct?
Yeah, Syria.
You have contacts in Syria.
Yeah.
If you give me a list of the people that you officially not can contact, then I can contact them because I can travel here and there on behalf of you.
Suddenly he just stood up and said he wanted to show me something.
This is a bug detector. It will detect any kind of bugs that you may carry in your body or someone may have put to you. Okay. If you had a micro or something in you, it will make the signal. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
You were mic'd up.
I was mic'd up, yeah.
While most of the documentary is filmed on hidden cameras and such, the cinematography is really good. The editing, the pacing, everything about the film, just from a purely technical point of view, is really good, in my opinion, especially considering it's a documentary. The story that is told, the narrative, the way they tell it, while trying to remain as objective in a sense with the truths that are coming out. Like, they're not trying to hide, cover anything. The filmmaker in the beginning talks about the main character and about his legitimacy. So he acknowledges that he doesn't know the true motivations behind him, but it doesn't really matter. We could question a lot of the things about the mole. Why is he doing it? Was he only just doing it to infiltrate North Korea? We'll never know. But I think a lot of the questions you can have about this documentary, they maybe aren't as important to the legitimacy of the documentary, because in it we hear a lot of crazy things from North Korean officials, and there's both audio and video proof of it, so there's really no denying it. So essentially, this documentary is more or less proof of a lot of the illegal activities that North Korea are involved with, many on completely different continents from them. I know this is probably something that you can say, oh, we already knew that, but we more or less assumed it, but this is actual proof. The things that this documentary uncovers and the guts the man playing the mole and Mr. James have is just totally incredible. And I'm truly surprised that these discoveries weren't talked about more. You know for a fact, if this had been a Netflix documentary, everybody would be talking about it. But I'm kind of glad it isn't, because while bias always plays a role in documentaries in some form, I much rather trust Mads Brügger and the national production crews behind this documentary, such as DR, NRK and SVT, which are the Danish, Norwegian and Swedish official broadcasting services. I much rather trust them than a corporate entity like Netflix, who are known to spin things a bit out of control. So now, I could have made this video a lot longer, cover every aspect of the documentary and go through truly full in depth, but this might be something I would do for a story where the source material isn't exclusively from one thing, because here a lot of it is only readily available in this documentary, and I don't want to rob the experience of watching this documentary from people. The creator and the mole and everyone involved deserves that you at least watched it rather than me summing it up in a 20-30 minute YouTube video. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if this type of video is something you'd like to see more of, and feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Bye bye.